Welcome. Thank you for joining the U.S. Data Management Project Management Practice Best Practice Series webinar. I'm Becky Melody, your hostess for today's session. Gary Meek, USDM's Project Management Practice Lead, will be presenting. The discussion today will cover introductions, webinar logistics, direction for post-webinar collaboration, and our discussion topic, Excellence Through Execution, Managing the Human Side of Change, which is the softer side of project management for life sciences. We're proud to have Gary joining us today for our presentation. He's the Global Practice Lead for USDM's Project Management team, and he has 25 years in program management and project management experience with more than 10 years in the life science domain. Gary has presented on project and change management to multiple forums and is a recognized leader in his field. He's a subject matter expert in program and project leadership, organizational change, strategic planning, and building teamwork. He has worked with small, medium, and large life science firms worldwide and recently led a cross-functional global project teams, including major organizational transformations and integrations. U.S. Data Management is focused exclusively on the life science domain. We're the market leader in providing IT, quality, and regulatory compliance professional service solutions. We are recognized as having subject matter experts across multiple practice areas, including IT and virtualization, quality and auditing, nutraceuticals, ECM, ERP, product lifecycle management, manufacturing automation and equipment, clinical and drug safety, business intelligence, of course, project management, and our GRC practice. We're headquartered in Ventura, California. We've delivered more than 1,000 successful projects with over 130 life science clients. We offer hands-on experience assisting clients who are under regulatory distress, and we're the market leader for validation accelerator packs. The content of our presentation today will be covered in approximately 30 minutes, and then we'll invite you to post questions for our team via the iLink message board on the lower left of your screen, or you can join the discussion on LinkedIn and post questions there. Of course, if your question is confidential, we're happy to address that offline. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and now I'll turn the presentation over to Gary.
Good morning. My name is Gary Meek, as Becky stated. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a different approach to project management, or an additional approach. Many times when we're project managers on a project, we have the responsibility to deliver, we have the accountability to deliver, and we have no authority in the organization. The teams are typically team members, they report elsewhere in the organization. So we really don't have authority over those people other than just related to the project. So we're going to start this morning a little bit. We're going to talk about probably things that you already are aware of, a little bit about change. We're going to talk about people resisting change and why they do this. We're going to talk about how to recognize some of the signs of the resistance, and then we're going to talk about kind of changing the way we approach project management and taking more of a leadership role as opposed to the standard management command and control type approach. And then I'm going to share with you a tool that I've used many times in the past very successfully. It's called a case for action. And it's really a series of talking points, kind of the extended elevator pitch, if you will, about the project and why we're doing it, and what's the best way to approach moving forward, and giving people more of an understanding of why the organization is taking on this project, what it means to the company, and how we're going to go about doing it. So start off with a little bit of kind of background information. as we project managers all know, things are tough right now. The global economy is very challenged, and we're being asked to deliver more and more and more faster, and in many cases with less resources. That being project managers. Failure rates are as high as 70%, depending on the study that you choose to view. So those are projects that are either not on time, not on budget, projects that fail to deliver the scope as promised. All of those would be part of that 70% of failure rate. New technology, business processes, right sizing, total quality management, all of these initiatives that we've seen over the recent years, they're all about the same thing. They're all about change, getting people to change the way they work, change the way they think, and change the way they behave. And as we all know, people don't like to change. We like to drive the same way to work every day. We like to get ready for work in the same order. Changes in the way we do things just are very difficult for us. So kind of the rules of change, significant change cannot occur without this resistance. You can't force people to change. Change is going to come from within. You can help lead people. You can guide people, but they have to do this on their own. Mistrust is a typical organizational culture. Obviously, we can't fix that with technology or business processes, and change is inevitable. And as you'll see throughout the presentation, you'll see a number of quotes that I've kind of mixed in here, but one of the ones that I like the best is the Woodrow Wilson quote, "If you want to make enemies, try to change something." So signs of resistance. We see it in probably every project that we do. Sometimes it's hard to recognize. Sometimes we recognize it quite visibly. Some people are very active in their resentment or their resistance. Some are very passive. My personal preference is for the active resistance folks. While it makes meetings difficult and challenging sometimes, it's much better to be dealing with someone who is actively bringing you the issues and actively having open discussions rather than passively going behind the scenes and creating turmoil throughout the organization, if you will. So some of the things that you see, you'll hear people talk about being underappreciated, undervalued. You'll see people starting to form these resistance cliques, if you will, everyone banding together against the project or banding together to identify all the issues and the problems with the project. You'll see a lot of rivalries start to come up where people that are part of the team will actually start to work against each other and try to better each other and not really working as part of the team. The feelings of resentment we kind of talked about, and the paranoia. You'll see, people thinking that various people on the team are out to get them, thinking that the company's out to get them because of the project that they're taking on. They didn't take on the project that they thought they should take on. So there's many ways that these signs of resistance will manifest themselves. And like I said, I'm just trying to identify a few just to kind of give you the background and the context of the information. One of the things that I will point out, though, is that people are all motivated differently. They have different things going on in their life. They have different things going on at home. So it's very difficult to come up with a common overarching approach for how to deal with these people that are resisting. I think one of the things that we as project managers need to work more heavily on is that building relationships and the communication. The focus for project managers tends to be very task-oriented, very very project management and discipline oriented. And what I think we need to work on as project managers is that approach to building relationships, one-on-one individual relationships with the people on the team, working closely with these people who are the resistance, working closely with people who are in the organization that are very critical to the organization, people who are highly visible, people who others tend to listen to. And that may not necessarily be hierarchically in the organization, but it may be someone who carries a lot of weight with the rest of the team and the rest of the organization. So overcoming resistance, how do we do that? We know it's going to be there. It's a natural part of every project. It's a natural part of human nature. So as I mentioned before, one of the best ways to do that is to build relationships. Work with people individually. Establish a relationship. Establish a rapport. Talk about common things that common likes, common hobbies. I'm a big believer in any project that I manage. I spend a lot of time walking around talking to the various team members. I spend a lot of time on the phone talking to the various team members. I try to send emails where appropriate, but I would much rather pick up the phone and call people and talk to them, because you can get that kind of personal approach, that kind of personal touch that helps overcome some of those resistance. Communicate early and often. So again, a lot of times in projects, we start the project, we have a kickoff meeting, we tell everybody what's going on, and then they don't hear from us until there's a problem. So one of the approaches that I like to take in this case for action will really kind of hone in on that is to, again, constantly communicate. It doesn't have to be a newsletter. It doesn't have to be any kind of public type thing. It can just be, again, picking up the phone. It can be a series of emails, but it's really about telling people what's going on, letting them know where you're at in the process, any issues that may be coming up, any things that you foresee, and really just, again, establishing that relationship and letting people know where we stand. Building a team of change leaders, it's the multiple people looking at this and leading the charge as opposed to having to be led by one. Leadership skills, we'll talk a little bit about leadership versus management later, but again, a lot of times people don't have those leadership skills, the ability to convey a vision, the ability to communicate, and it's something that people need to be trained, people need to build that skill set. Creating trust. A lot of times the issues that we see in projects are related to the fact that people don't trust the organization or that people don't trust the other members of the team. And again, this kind of goes back to that building relationships. And the last thing, to overcoming the resistance is banding the team together, creating that common goal that we're all working towards to achieve, kind of building the team and having everyone pointing in the same direction. And then the last part on the resistance is, I talked a little bit about it, the active resistance versus the passive resistance, but it's really important that you focus, that you work with people closely as this resistance comes up. And a lot of times one of the things that I've seen in projects that I've worked on is instead of trying to work closely with that person or understand where that person's coming from, a lot of times people just escalate the issue. This person is not cooperating with the team, whatever the case may be. They escalate it to their manager, and that may solve that problem short term. That person may be removed from the team, or their manager may talk to them. But what ends up happening then is that resistance, that person, but also the resistance from everyone else, then goes kind of underground. well, we don't want to bring up the issue, or we don't want to talk about it, or we don't want to be perceived as being negative because of what happened to the person before. So it kind of goes underground, and now you start to see these things where people are having meetings elsewhere, and they're having lunches elsewhere, and they're not part of the team, and they're the constant complaining and those kinds of things, but they're not doing it in an active fashion where it can be constructive. They're doing it passively and away from the rest of the team. So you really don't know what the issues are. So leading versus managing. So one of the things, it's always called project management, and I can remember when I first started doing project management, and kind of the rule of thumb was if they called you a project lead, that was a red flag, because you really would not end up having any ability to drive the project, to be able to get things done. You wanted to be called a project manager. Of course, this was far too long ago, over 20 years ago when I started doing this. But now we're talking about something a little bit different. We're talking about leading and being a project leader as opposed to just a project lead. The difference between a leader and a manager, from my perspective, again, is leaders can talk about vision. They can talk about moving people in a common direction. They can get people to move in a common direction. I guess one of the things in this presentation that I would typically do would be to show a visual, and unfortunately that's not going to work here, but if you can picture this in your mind, to me the difference between leading and managing is if you take a piece of string and you lay the string out on a table, and you get behind the string and you try to push the string. So I'm pushing the string along, and obviously it doesn't stay straight. It goes in multiple directions, and it really doesn't accomplish what you want it to accomplish. To me, that's managing. So I'm identifying the tasks. I'm following up with people. I'm telling them what they need to be doing. Is this going to be done by Friday? You said it was going to be done. It's not done. That kind of a thing. And obviously those things have to happen, but they can be done in a slightly different approach where we're not pushing people through the change, but we're actually leading them. So now the leader is on the other end of the string, and the leader is grabbing the string and pulling it across the table, and you can see visually that string stays straight, it follows, and we've conveyed the vision, we know where we're going, and we're pulling the rest of the team along with us. So to me, that's the difference between leading and managing. The little blurb here too, managing produces predictable, consistent, short-term results. So again, as a project manager, that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve predictable, consistent results. But leaders produce dramatic, long-term strategic change. And that is really the ultimate goal of whatever we do as a project manager, is being able to affect the organization and affect change on the organization. So to me, those are the kind of the two differences in the approaches to managing projects. So now let's go to kind of the tool that I use in projects to help me take the projects from the beginning to the end. As Becky noted in the beginning, I've done projects that are major transformation projects that essentially re-engineer the entire organization top to bottom. I've done projects that are company culture integration projects, done many, many, many different kinds of projects. And typically I'll use this case for action as a way to work with the senior leaders of the project, understand the project, understand exactly what we're trying to accomplish, and put this in a 1 or 2 page document that we can all use to kind of make sure we're all saying the same things, make sure we're all speaking from the same page, make sure that everyone that is part of this is saying the same thing and leading people and driving people to the same goal. So it's a great communication tool for the project leadership, whether you use a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation, really doesn't matter. It's more about the content and what's there. One of the things that you want to do for this case for action is you want to identify short-term wins. So you want to make sure that in that case for action, there's some interim steps. You want to start to build momentum. You want to start the people understanding that this is going to be a success. This is going to achieve the goals. This is going to be able to get to where we were aiming to get. As I mentioned in communications, you want to use this early and often. You want to make sure that you're setting the expectations for the organization. You want to make sure you're setting the expectations for the team. And you want to make sure that you're encouraging everyone to participate, whether they're an active member of every team meeting, or they're an active member of the core team, or whether they're just a user of the system or the new process or whatever it is we're trying to do. People want to know where they're going. People don't mind going on a journey, so to speak, but they want to make sure that they know how they're going to get there, and they want to make sure that they know what it's going to look like when it's done. And so this goes back to that vision and being able to convey that vision and get people to buy into the vision. And then last, the new world can be scary. Everyone needs to see where they're going to fit. And kind of going back, to my beginnings as a project manager, I worked on a system where we were redoing the data entry for an insurance company, and we redesigned some screens, we redesigned the process, we worked to try to make it as efficient as we could make it. We succeeded. The system was more efficient, but we never really were able to get the people doing the data entry to agree that it was better, that it was more efficient. But in any case studies that we did, in any testing that we did, we were able to improve the time somewhere around 50%. So an 8-hour job would take a 4-hour job. And of course, I'm an early on project manager. Didn't really understand why people wouldn't come on board with that. Why wouldn't you want to do things faster? And of course now, as I look back, there's 4 or 5 people in the data entry group. We're doing things 50% faster. That's the only thing that they do. And so, now it's pretty easy to see why they didn't want it to go faster. What would they do if they couldn't? What would they do with that extra 50% of their time? Or will the company cut back and say, oh, we have 4 people, we only need 2 people now, and which 2 people are going to be there, and now you're affecting their jobs, and now you're affecting their paychecks, and now you're affecting their home life, and it goes on and on and on. So it's pretty easy to see, as you start to look at it from that light, that these types of things can really create issues for people, and so they need to know how they fit into this. They need to know what's the organization going to look like and where's their part in this piece going forward. So what goes into a case for action? So the first thing is the vision. And this, a lot of times it's helpful if this vision comes from a very senior level person, mostly because they're better at it than we are. But also they have the vision. They understand what this project means to the organization. They understand the big picture. And so, the case for action would include a vision. What's this going to look like when we get there? And then, of course, part of that vision needs to get to people how they're going to fit into that vision as we go forward. You need to make sure that you state the what and, more importantly, the why for the change. So why are we doing this? We need to improve our time to market for a new drug. We need to be more compliant with FDA regulations. We need to, the EU had a change to their submission format. We need to be able to comply with that. So there's a lot of reasons of why, but it's a matter of being able to state that and letting people know we're not doing this merely because we felt like doing it. We're doing this because of a solid business reason to be able to do this. The competition has gotten better. Any of those kinds of things. But it needs to be a very compelling, a very well-stated understanding of why we need to do this change. And in doing that, then, we establish a sense of urgency. So this is not about doing it change for the sake of change. This is about we need to do this to remain competitive in the industry. And so by establishing that sense of urgency, now we start to pull the team together because they see it's something that the organization needs to do. It's something that we're being compelled to do. It's not something that, again, we're doing just because we feel like making people change. So the next thing that needs to be part of this then is it needs to be a clear definition of the transition. So it's not enough just to put milestones on a timeline chart. It's about how are we going to guide these people to get from where they are today to where they're going to be in the future. What are the steps? We're going to provide some extra training. We're going to have workshops to allow people to participate. We're going to have planning sessions. It's about helping people get from where they are today to where they need to be and letting them see that we have a vision. We have an understanding of what needs to take place to get them there. And obviously having the timeline and when we're looking to do this, obviously those things are important as well. But you need more. You really need to help people understand how we're going to get them there. And then, we need to have kind of well-defined goals and performance objectives. So, again, what is the goal of this? How are we going to measure this? How are we going to measure the effectiveness of this? It's outside of timelines and budgets. Obviously, again, those are important. And I'm not trying to minimize the standard project management tools, but there are things that we need to do outside of the timelines and budgets if we're going to help people overcome their resistance, help people become part of the team, help people start to help us move in the right direction. And so, again, the performance objectives would be critical in helping us understand, are we being successful in doing that? And so just one more kind of thought for the road, another quote for you about change. This is from Will Rogers, and even if you are on the right track, you will get run over if you just sit there. So it's really about change is inevitable. We're going to continue to change no matter what organization we're in. Things are going to change. The economy is going to change. The competition is going to change. And so we have to change. And so as project managers who are typically responsible for driving this through the organization and making things happen, people ask me many times, what do you do? And, I tell them, I get things done. And that's really what project management is about. It's about getting things done. So that's all I have. I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and please feel free to join in the areas that Becky had mentioned, and we can collaborate together on some of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Well said. It truly is about just getting it all done. We will open the floor to questions now, and while you're typing in those questions, I would remind you that the webinar has been recorded and will be available on our website, which is, of course, USDataManagement.com. While you're on the website, feel free to take a look at the previously recorded webinar sessions. Again, we have a various array of topics there across the multiple USDM practice areas that we mentioned earlier. Feel free to let us know if you have a topic you'd like to have us present on. We're always happy to hear your feedback and suggestions for future presentations. Gary, it looks like our first question has come in. It's from Joe, and he's asking, project management is about identifying what needs to be done and making sure people get their tasks done, but how is that related to actual project management?
Right. So, yeah, so again, it's kind of the discipline of project management versus kind of the what I would term kind of the new role of project managers, which is more project leadership. So it's about understanding people, it's about building relationships, it's about communicating as opposed to identifying tasks and browbeating people to make sure they get their tasks done on time.
All right, next question is from Sue. Where can I get a sample of case for action?
So I would be happy to provide that, and maybe Becky, you have a best way of how we might be able to get that to the group.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Happy to do that. We can take care of it immediately following the session. Okay, very good. Our next question, let's see. Can you give a practical example of what people do when they resist?
Right. So I guess, it happens a lot. It's I guess there's a couple of things. One, it's the people tend to drag their feet. So we need something to get approved. We need them to review something. And this I typically see at the management level. So maybe we're putting in a new system that was a senior executive's idea and not necessarily a mid-level manager's idea. And so the mid-level manager, sabotages, if you will, probably a strong word, but the project by slowing things down. They don't approve things on time. It's kind of the passive resistance. And then another part you'll see people who are off constantly taking bad news to the rest of the team and the rest of the organization. So let's say we're doing testing and it's very early on testing, and we don't have, we know there are going to be issues, right? We know there are bugs in early on testing of systems or applications. But people so the people that are not part of or that are part of the team but would show these as a practical example would go off, tell everybody that, oh, by the way, I participated in the testing today and it went horribly. We had 6 bugs. I couldn't get through the whole thing, and on and on and on, without giving them the context of where they are. And, of course, then you get the rest of the people in their department or in the organization that are thinking, well, if this person who's part of the team doesn't like this system, how are we going to like it? And it really just starts to build the resistance in the organization.
Thank you, Gary. Nancy is asking somewhat of a part 2 of that same question. How is the case for action different from a project charter?
So again, typically the project charter would be talking about a description of the project as opposed to more of a vision of how this would happen. What's the big picture? What does this look like from a senior executive's point of view? How does this affect the organization from something other than a dollars and cents. Typically, in a project charter, we'll be talking about things like, we're going to increase the revenue by X. We're going to avoid X number of costs, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't talk about kind of the vision. This puts us in a leadership role in the pharmaceutical industry. This will allow us to bring new drugs to market in 30% less time. And here's the vision of what those new drugs might be. So it's really more of a vision as opposed to kind of, again, the typical charters are, and maybe some people have better charters than what I've seen throughout some of the organizations. But it's typically more, dry, if you will, lacking vision and more about this particular project and this particular project numbers, right? The improvement, the timeline, the budget, and those kinds of things. And when you're dealing with people outside of the project, they don't really, that doesn't resonate with them. We're going to be the market leaders because of this project. Those types of things resonate with the rest of the organization. So it's really a matter of, again, we have a lot of tools that we use. It's really a matter of conveying the information as opposed to necessarily which tool you use.
Very good, thank you. Next question is from Ali. It says, I have a title of validation lead and there's no project manager on my project. How do I get back the trust from the technical resources? Finding it hard to train developers as they do not have experience in regulated companies, regulated industry, I imagine.
Right, yeah, that's definitely a challenge, and I think, again, that goes back to, you're not going to be able to force that on people. You're going to have to, through building these relationships, bring that team along and make that team it's a learning thing for them. It's a new thing to put on their resume. There's a lot of ways to bring people along, and each one of those developers will be motivated by something slightly different.
Absolutely, and making it clear that, it's regulated industry. It is what it is, and, we must comply, right? Okay, next question from Asif. How do you get out of being a project lead and just be the project manager? Often both are required in smaller companies. Good question.
Right, so it's your role as the project lead. So again, I make a distinction between a lead and a leader. And typically in any project that I've ever worked, in a title or in a what they put on the paperwork, my title is almost always project manager, but I almost always take on the role through building the credibility, through building the relationships, through building the trust to end up being a leader of that project. And again, that's different than a lead. And I think it's a matter of just, you just start to assume some of those activities and start to assume some of those tasks and not, you have to be careful not to step on anyone's toes, obviously, but I think in building some of those relationships, you can assume extra activities and assume more responsibility and assume more accountability without stepping on those toes.
Well said. Okay, next question is from Erica. What do you recommend when the project team has more seniority than the project manager? In other words, the team pigeonholes the PM into a traditional management role versus the leadership role, even when the project manager has capability to lead.
And I think the big key is that you just continue to talk about these kinds of things, because typically in an organization, even the mid-level, senior-level managers don't know how to lead people. So you may be sitting in a room where they may be more senior, they've been around the organization longer, but as you start to bring some of these tools in, and some different tools, things they haven't seen before, like a case for action, they probably haven't seen those kinds of things. As you start to bring those kinds of things in, they start to see that you are indeed talented, that you do have fresh new ideas and new ways to help lead this organization. And typically, again, not always, but typically, people are more than willing to let you into the fray. Again, not stepping on any toes. We're all in this together. We're just trying to make this happen. And, I'd like to help where I can.
Terrific. Okay, looks like our final question is from Satyendra. It says, does USDM project team use an established set of tools for change management? Examples given are spreadsheets or MS Project, etc.
Right. So I guess we use a lot of different tools. So at USDM, we have a set of tools that we use for our projects, but we also at times have to act as a bit of a chameleon, if you will, because we work in so many different organizations, and these organizations have their own tools, their own methodology, their own approach. And there we're in more of a influencing role. We're trying to influence them to maybe do things slightly differently or use a different set of tools. In some cases, they have outstanding tools that don't need any changes. So, the answer to that is yes, we do have our own set, and sometimes we end up using that, and sometimes we end up using the client's approach.
Thank you, Gary. All right. We again want to thank you for taking the time to join us today and appreciate the good questions coming in. Also, thank you for those of you that have offered notes of appreciation here to the group. We would invite you to join the discussion forum on LinkedIn. We appreciate any insight or feedback, suggestions that you have for future topics. If you appreciated today's presentation, please let us know. Take a moment and click the like button on the USDM LinkedIn group page, or even better, post a comment there. We'll take you just a few seconds, but it would mean a lot to us because in 2012, this is going to be an important indicator that our management team is looking at to use as a basis for whether or not to continue to fund our complementary series. When you go to our website, you'll notice a myriad of presentations there, everything from IT, virtualization, our quality auditing, how to get ready for your first PAI audit, laboratory equipment, etc. USDM is start-to-finish compliance for life sciences. So if you have questions, we're here to help you sort through those questions and to find the best solutions for those issues. Thank you again, Gary, for presenting. Very good information, and the human factor is key to success, truly. On behalf of the U.S. Data Management Team, we do appreciate the opportunity to team with you all towards excellence in compliance. Have a wonderful day.